All right, let's dive into a number so big, so massive, it literally shapes our world, our economies, and, well, our future. We're talking about global debt. Okay, just take a second and look at this number. That's $313 trillion. That was the grand total of global debt at the end of 2023. I mean, it's a figure that's almost impossible to wrap your head around, right? It's like this giant mountain of money connecting every single country on the planet. So, a number that huge begs the question, where does it all come from? I mean, who owes all this money? Let's peel back the layers and see what this colossal figure is actually made of. To start, we're going to slice up the global debt pie. And I have a feeling you're going to be surprised by which slice turns out to be the biggest. It's probably not the one you're thinking of. And there it is, our first big surprise. A whopping 51%, more than half of all global debt, belongs to private households and companies. You know, things like mortgages, car loans, and business loans. That government debt you always hear about in the news, that's actually the second largest piece, sitting at 29%. Okay, so we know the debt is split up, mainly between the private sector and governments. But who exactly are the biggest borrowers? Let's put some names or, well, some countries to these massive numbers. Let's begin with that 29% slice we just saw. We're talking about public debt. This is the money owed by national governments all around the world. Now, to really get a handle on a country's debt, you can't just look at the total number. You have to compare it to the size of its economy. That's its GDP. Just look at Japan. Its public debt is more than 2.5 times the value of everything the entire country produces in a year. And you see other major economies like Greece and Italy with some incredibly high ratios too. So what this ratio really tells us is all about a country's financial health. See, the problem isn't just owing money. It's about your ability to pay it back. So a really high ratio can be a big red flag, kind of like an early warning sign that there could be trouble down the road. Okay, but let's not forget about that huge 51% slice from our pie chart. Government spending is a big deal, for sure, but it's only one part of the story. The biggest chunk of debt, remember, is actually in the private sector. And believe me, this isn't some small niche problem. In a country like France, private debt is sitting at around 250% of GDP. And even in economic powerhouses like the US and Germany, the levels are seriously high. This thing is widespread. You know, all of this brings up a really fascinating question. If governments, companies, and regular people are all borrowing, who's on the other side of the deal? Who are all the lenders holding these IOUs? It's a bit of a mind bender, isn't it? If pretty much everyone is borrowing, then who's doing all the lending? The answer, it turns out, shows just how deeply interconnected our global financial system really is. So this debt is held by a whole bunch of different players. You've got the big central banks like the Fed in the US or the European Central Bank. You've got your regular commercial banks, and then huge amounts are held by other countries. For instance, China and Japan are two of the biggest foreign owners of US government debt. But here it is, the most direct way this whole thing connects to you. A massive, massive portion of this global debt is owned by pension funds and mutual funds. Why? Because government bonds are seen as super safe investments. So that money you're putting away for retirement, there's a very good chance it's being used to buy up little pieces of this giant global debt. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important question. We've seen how much debt there is and who owes it. But is all this debt actually a bad thing? You see, debt is really just a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. Sustainable debt can be amazing. It can build highways, fund new technologies, and create incredible growth. But unsustainable debt, well, that can lead to economic collapse, forcing painful budget cuts, and causing all sorts of social problems. And we don't have to look far to see what happens when debt gets out of control. The crises in Argentina at the turn of the century, and more recently in Greece, are just brutal reminders of the real-world consequences: economic meltdowns, severe austerity, and massive social unrest. And that really gets to the heart of it. Maybe we've been focusing on the wrong thing. Instead of just asking how big is the pile of debt, maybe the real question we should be asking is, what is this money being used for? Is it being invested in things that create future growth, or is it just blowing up a bubble? So we're left with the ultimate question. Is this $313 trillion mountain of debt the engine that will power our future prosperity?
Or is it a ticking time bomb, just waiting to go off? The answer to that is going to define the world for all of us for decades to come.